the last episode, we explored whether the Aryan-Dravidian dichotomy is a truth or a myth. For centuries, scholars have debated the idea of two distinct civilizations in the Indian subcontinent, Dravidians, indigenous to the land, and Aryans, the later arrivals, often portrayed as Asuras and Devas in the Puranas. These two groups clashed, exchanged, and eventually merged culturally and genetically to form what we now call as the Great Indian Civilization. This series does not seek to prove one civilization greater than the other. Every ancient civilization is unique and remarkable. Our aim is simply to recognize the existence of two such cultural streams in the Indian subcontinent with their own languages, traditions, cultures, worldview and achievements, and that their gradual fusion gave rise to what we are now. In the last episode, we found evidence for such a dichotomy in the foundational texts of both the traditions, Sanskrit Bhagavad Gita and Tamil Tirumurugatrupadai. If you haven't watched the earlier episode, please do watch and then proceed with this video. In this episode, let us look into the simple ethnological and literary clues obvious in front of our eyes for the existence of such a dichotomy. Let us reserve the scientific evidences produced by the archaeologists and the genetic scientists for a future episode. The very presence of two language families in India, Dravidian and Indo-Aryan, is itself a proof for the existence of two distinct civilizations in the Indian subcontinent. These two language families developed independently from their original proto-forms. Tamil developed from Proto-Dravidian language to its classical form, while Sanskrit developed from Proto-Indo-European language into its Vedic, Pali and Prakrit forms. For a language to grow to its classical form from mere sounds, it would have taken thousands of years, within which time a complete civilization also would have emerged. So when Tamil reached its zenith, its classical form, and Sangam literature blossomed, a complete civilization had also emerged with its own culture, traditions and achievements. As said earlier, let us not judge which civilization is greater, but just look at all these academically. To the casual eye, Tamil may seem derived from Sanskrit because of the many loan words it has, like Dharmam, Suham, Ishtam, Janmam and so on. Yet, each has an earlier and original Tamil word, Aram, Virupam, Inbam, Piravi and so on. Scholars affirm that Tamil has its own grammar, structure and vocabulary fully capable of standing alone. The Indo-Aryan influence on Tamil began only about 2000 years ago with the spread of Buddhism, Jainism and Vedic culture into the Tamil lands. In this video, we are going to look into the exact historical moment in which the Indo-Aryan languages could have entered Tamilagam. A brief comparison of the unique features of both the cultures, the Dravidian and Aryan. Cremation is sacred and dominant in the Aryan culture. Burial practice prevailed in the Dravidian culture. All over West India and South India, from the Indus Valley sites to Tamil Nadu excavation sites, abundant proof for burial practices like urn burial, cist burial, pit burial, dolmens and hero stones etc. are found. And no proof for cremation is found in the earliest period, and the proof for cremation starts appearing only from the period which marks the arrival of Vedic culture. Let us look at a poem from Purananuru belonging to Sangam literature, which talks about urn burial, which was the Dravidian mortuary practice till Sangam age, during Sangam age and even post Sangam age. In this poem, the heroine, grieving the loss of her husband or lover, pleads with the potter. She says to him, I journeyed with him through many difficult terrains. Like a little lizard clinging to the spoke of a wheel of a cart, goes wherever the cart goes. Now that he is gone, please make his burial urn big enough with space for me also inside it. Let us read the poem. Kalamsei kove, அச்சுடை சாகாட்டு ஆரம் பொருந்திய சிறுவெண் பள்ளி போல தன்னோடு சுரம்பல வந்த எமக்கும் அருளி வியன்மலர் அகன்பொழில் ஈமத்தாழி அகலிது ஆக வனைமோ நனந்தலை மூதூர் கலம்சை கோவே. You can find the link for this poem to read in the description box, done by Mrs. Vaidehi Herbert with word-to-word English translation. This sad poem shows us that urn burial was common during Sangam age in Tamil culture. But archaeological evidences clearly show us that a practice of wife getting buried along with husband did not exist in Tamil culture, unlike the sati traditions of the cremation practices of the Vedic culture. Over time, however, Vedic culture spread into Tamil lands. Gradually, cremation, central to Vedic tradition, replaced the earlier Dravidian burial practices. Even the practice of sati had entered into the ruling classes of the Tamil dynasties, but never seems to have reached the commoners. Please pause here and read the basic, unique, characteristic features of each of these cultures. In the coming episode, we will explore each of these cultural features in detail, drawing from Sangam texts and history. For now, the very existence of two distinct cultural streams, so different in their outlook and practices, strongly supports the reality of the Aryan-Dravidian dichotomy. All our Puranas were originally made in the Indo-Aryan languages. Hence, they are Deva's perspective. We proved this in the earlier episode quoting Tirumurugatrupadai verses. If we agree to this idea, let us examine whether the Asura voice is heard anywhere else in the Dravidian literature or Sangam literature. We are familiar with the story of Samudramandhan or the churning of the ocean of milk. The Devas, having lost their strength, sought Vishnu's help. He advised them to churn the ocean of milk for nectar, the Amrita. Since the task was immense, they took the Asuras as partners. Together they churned until Dhanvantari appeared with the part of nectar. By right, both sides should have shared it, but Vishnu, in the guise of Mohini, tricked the Asuras and gave the nectar solely to the Devas. The Devas regained their powers while the Asuras were betrayed. In Sanskrit texts, this act is celebrated as Vishnu's cleverness, but in Paripadal, a Sangam poem, Vishnu is mocked in a derogatory tone for cheating the Asuras. Is it a faint echo of Asura's voice? This is a third poem in Paripadal. The author is Kaduvan Ilaveyinanar. It starts as Mayoye Mayoye Marupirappu Arukkum Maasiyil Sevadi. This poem praises Lord Vishnu along with many other gods. The link of this poem is given in the description with word-to-word translation done by Mrs. Vaidehi Herbert. In this poem, the poet calls Vishnu's one hand out of many thousands of hands as an unfair hand, a hand of injustice, a hand of partiality, when he cheated the Asuras while distributing the nectar obtained from the ocean of milk. Nagai achaga nallamirdu kalanda, நடுவு நிலை திரம்பிய நயமில் ஒரு கை இரு கை மால், the poem goes on. Tamil scholar Dr. R. Balakrishnan has often spoken about this verse, pointing out how the story of Samudramandhan, essentially a tale of injustice, is glorified even today, even displayed as murals in India's new Parliament House and at Bangkok Airport. We have also seen how the noble Dravidian kings like Yerumai of Kudanadu were later demonized in Sanskrit texts as evil and wicked. But were they truly wicked or simply the Devas' rivals, the Suras' rivals? Sangam poems seem to carry the missing voice of the other side, the Asuras. The long Sangam poem Pattinapalai offers another powerful glimpse. In over 200 verses, it paints a vivid picture of Kaveri Pumbattinam, a bustling port city of Sangam age. It describes a perennial Kaveri river, continuously yielding agricultural fields, coconut palm, banana, betel nut and mango groves, sugarcane industry, huge mansions, prosperity everywhere, bazaar streets where salt is sold in barter system for other commodities, lakes and ponds, great public kitchens, huge places of worship named kotams with beautiful pictures on the walls, many cattle sheds, playgrounds where wrestling competitions are held, food like sea fish and river tortoise cooked and eaten, the houses surrounded by pigs, many breeds of fowl, goats, and also wells. The rows of fishermen's houses with fishing nets in the front yards, their worshipping methods like planting of shark horn on the sand and offering liquor to the god. How people play and enjoy swimming in the ocean and then in the river wearing flower garlands. How the seashore sand stinks of flesh. How the people indulge in festivities throughout the day and night, till midnight by singing, dancing, and acting plays. How the king's men, throughout day and nights, the tax collectors, got the goods that arrived in ships on the shore or awaiting to be loaded on ships and they sleep on the beach. How limitless sacks of goods arrived to the port's warehouses, either from the ships or from inland. The multi-story tall mansions in the city with circular verandas and staircases. The beautiful women with variety of cloths and jewels, singers, dancers, instrumentalists busy in many festivities on the ever-eventful streets of the city. The many hero stones, the place of their worship, decorated and with flags on tall posts. The places where debates among scholars were held with flags on posts. Liquor shops and shops with cooked meat and fried fish with flags. Flags hoisted on the ships and many more flags. The list of various goods that entered the city in wagons for export, black pepper, sandalwood, ahil, gold and many more goods. Horses arriving on ships from abroad. The cosmopolitan nature of the city with a lot of people living there who had come from various foreign kingdoms and speaking many different languages. Along with all of these descriptions, the poet says that the groves surrounding the city had Jain and Buddhist monasteries and ashrams where sages performed fire rituals. The poet also says that the cuckoos living in these groves, unable to bear the smoke and heat produced by the Vedic fire rituals, somehow entered the tightly guarded city and have started living along with the pigeons already settled in the mansions inside the city. தவப்பள்ளி தாழ்காவின் அவிர்சடை முனிவர் அங்கிவேட்கும் ஆவுதி நறும்புகை முனையி குயில்தம் மாயிரும் பெடையொடு இரியல் போகி பூதம் காக்கும் புகழரும் கடிநகர் தூதுணம் புறவோடு துச்சில் சேக்கும். The link of Pattinapalai is also given in the description box. You can read with word-to-word translation in English. In these 6 verses, the poet clearly says that the cuckoos so far living in the groves surrounding the city, now hating the smoke and heat of the fire rituals, somehow enter the tightly guarded city to live along with the pigeons already living in the mansions inside the city. Further, the poet describes the different settlements of traders, fishermen and farmers inside the city. And while describing the life of each of these professionals, he says that the farmers gave both cooked and uncooked food to the sages who lived in the groves reciting the Vedas and spread their fame. So many descriptions of the city show a vibrant cosmopolitan urban trading and industrial civilization, but nowhere we see the existence of Vedic culture inside the city. No Agraharams or Brahmin settlement has been described in the city. Instead, the sages are said to be reciting Vedas and doing fire rituals in the groves surrounding the city, and the poet clearly talks about the environmental pollution of the forest with heat and smoke by the new practices of Vedic fire rituals and about the impact of the same on the wildlife there. Maybe Pattinapalai captures the exact historical moment of arrival of the Vedic culture along with Buddhism and Jainism in the Tamil lands, because Pattinapalai describes a vibrant Sangam age city alive with its own culture, suddenly confronted with fire rituals and Vedic recitations. When understanding this idea, we are reminded of another story, the story of Thataka, a striking parallel in a larger picture. The Asura leader Thataka of the great epic Ramayana. She has been portrayed as a Asura woman and hence evil in the literature of the Indo-Aryan languages, the clear voice of Suras or Devas. The story of Thataka is well known. She lived with her sons in the forest of the Gangetic plains where the sages performed the Vedic fire rituals. She obstructed and disrupted the rituals by pouring water in the fire sacrifices being performed, did her level best to chase them away from the forest. This is the complaint against her, which the sage Vishwamitra made to King Dasaratha. The princes Rama and Lakshmana accompanied the sage to the forest to guard the fire rituals. Thataka still persisted to not let the fire rituals to be performed in the forest, and Rama ultimately killed Thataka. But what exactly was her crime? She did not slaughter any sages. She simply resisted their fire rituals, which would have polluted the tropical forests of Gangetic Plains. In fact, her husband too was burned alive by those very sages. And yet, she chose to fight and die, protecting her land instead of fleeing from the scene. Now, let us think, if the sages had been performing the fire rituals in those forests for thousands of years through generations, and Thataka is the newcomer to the forest, she could have run away to some other forest when the great archer Rama came to protect the fire rituals. But she stood her ground, fought with Rama till her last breath to save the forest from pollution. Would such determination come from a newcomer to that forest or from someone rooted in that forest for generations? Perhaps the real newcomers were the sages and not Thataka. What other crimes are attributed to Thataka? The Ramayana calls her a terror to all beings, even accusing her of eating human flesh. But we must remember, this is the voice of the Suras for whom the Asuras were enemies. We saw a similar case with Erumai, the noble Dravidian king of Dravidian literature, later demonized in Indo-Aryan literature as Mahishasura, burdened with tales of cruelty and vice. When Rama once asked sage Vishwamitra why the forests had lost their greenery and become barren, the sage replied that it was because of Thataka. But we are left here to wonder, was it truly because of Thataka or because of the excessive Vedic fire rituals performed by the sages there? In the Ramayana, Thataka herself is never allowed a voice, and we cannot expect to hear it either. Yet, if we look from our own perspective, why not see her as the first environmentalist of the Indian subcontinent, a woman who sacrificed her life to protect her forest from the smoke and fire of alien rituals? If she had spoken, what language would it have been? Most likely Proto-Dravidian. And whenever we think of Asuras, an image arises, figures with buffalo horns. But if they were real people, as we have discussed throughout these episodes, they could not have grown horns. Perhaps their chieftains wore horned crowns as symbols of power. Fascinatingly, seals from the Indus Valley civilization, often identified as pre-Vedic and Dravidian, depict a figure seated in yogic posture wearing just such a horned crown, a crown with buffalo horns. Tamil scholar Dr. R. Balakrishnan IAS has spoken extensively about this deep connection between the Dravidians and the buffalo in his lecture Aninadai Erumai, the majestic gait of the buffalo. The link is in the description, and I strongly recommend watching it for a richer understanding of this ancient cultural bond. Thank you.